Imminent threat. The U.S. and all Americans have a new formidable enemy in the terror group ISIS. Plea for protection. The papal envoy voices deep concern for persecuted minorities in Iraq. Ice bucket ethics. Popular viral fundraiser opens debate over funding embryonic stem cell research. And Stairway to Heaven. How art helps the church raise hearts to the Creator. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, August 22nd, 2014. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. At least 64 people are dead, another 60 wounded after a militant attack on a Sunni mosque in Iraq. A suicide bomber and several gunmen attacked the mosque in a village about 75 miles northeast of Baghdad during Friday prayers. It is not clear tonight if Shiite militiamen or Islamic State extremists carried out the attack. What we do know about the Islamic State now is that there is no limit to its brutality. The U.S. Secretary of Defense calls these extremists one of the most capable groups the U.S. has ever faced. Our Jason Calvi joining us now with that story.
That's right, Brian. But the FBI and Homeland Security say they know of no specific or credible terror threats here in the United States. But an intelligence note sent out to state and local police says officials remain concerned. Now the Pentagon is talking about how to stop the terrorists. The world mourns the beheading of U.S. journalist James Foley. The life of this American reporter is also at risk. The threats haven't stopped U.S. airstrikes. Here you see American bombs pounding ISIL targets yesterday. And Iraqi and Kurdish forces are fighting to retake control of the area around the important Mosul Dam. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel warns Americans about the Islamic State.
They are an imminent threat to every interest we have, whether it's in Iraq or anywhere else.
ISIL is also known as ISIS, or the Islamic State. They've expanded from Syria to Iraq. The group's taken control of several towns and Iraq's second largest city. They issue ultimatums: convert or die.
They're beyond just a terrorist group. They marry ideology, a sophistication of strategic and tactical military prowess. They are tremendously well funded. Oh, this is beyond anything that we've seen.
Defense officials say they tried this summer to rescue hostages, including James Foley. Will they try more rescues? The Pentagon press secretary gives his take to CNN.
We have an obligation to make the attempt when we can. We have an obligation to protect and to rescue American citizens that are being held hostage. That's a responsibility that we in the military take very seriously.
As for broader military plans for action against ISIL, U.S. defense officials have left open the possibility of targeting fighters in Syria. And today, a White House official says they're prepared to go across borders to fight terrorism. They call the death of the journalist an act of terrorism against our country, Brian.
All right, Jason, we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But first, Pope Francis's envoy to Iraq says religious minorities being attacked by Islamic State militants need to be defended. Cardinal Fernando Filoni is reinforcing the Vatican's position that military force is justified in this case. Cardinal Filoni has just returned from his trip to northern Iraq to deliver money and meet with minority Christians and Yazidis. Here he is entering the local church of St. George in Bangesh, Iraq. He also met and spoke with internally displaced people and now urges action from the international community.
We are in a society today where we have so many organizations, and they do a lot. But this is emergencies. Perhaps we needed to see United Nations or other big organization to intervene to defend this.
The Cardinal says he spoke with Kurdish leaders during his trip and they don't want a war. Instead of ground troops, they told the Cardinal they need equipment to defend their land. One of the Pope's closest advisors has written a letter to Chaldean Catholics in Iraq expressing concern for the safety and well-being of their communities. Christian and Muslim refugees passed the time at a Chaldean cathedral in Erbil. Cardinal Oscar Rodriguez Maradiaga said in his letter that it is with aching hearts and great dismay that we see such pictures of the displaced. He said they are literally robbed of every last possession. The Vatican says Cardinal Rodriguez is calling on the Islamic State to stop inflicting atrocities. Instead, it should build peaceful societies for minority and majority communities alike. And now some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. More than 191,000 people. That is now the death toll from 3 years of conflict in Syria. The United Nations Human Rights Commission announced that shocking figure today.
It's an indicative number based on very, very precise data of individual killings. And the most important thing to remember about any number is this is not a number, it's people. And people are dying every single day.
The Human Rights Commissioner criticized the world's paralysis over the fighting in Syria, saying it has dropped off the international radar in the face of so many other armed conflicts around the world. These new figures include additional killings from earlier periods, as well as deaths since the last casualty report. In Gaza, an apparent retaliation by Hamas against other Palestinians suspected of working with Israel. Hamas released images of the executions on a local website. The terror group says the 18 people murdered were supplying information to Israel. The hooded Hamas gunmen executed the alleged spies on the street in front of people leaving Friday prayers at the mosque. The remains of 20 victims of the Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 are now home. An honor guard performed a solemn ceremony at the airport in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia's capital city. The royal family attended the receiving ceremony of the remains and ashes that were identified by Dutch forensics experts. 43 of the 298 people on board Flight 17 were from Malaysia. Ukraine and many Western countries say a Russian-supplied missile shot down the plane over eastern Ukraine in July. The parents of James Foley are speaking today about their son and the negotiations to free him before he was killed. The family spoke on the Today Show, saying they heard from the kidnappers in an email last week. A $130 million ransom was demanded, which ultimately was not met. The militants then killed Foley and posted a video of the horrific act Tuesday. His mom, Diane Foley, commented on Pope Francis's call to the family. She said he was just so kind to call, as the Holy Father is dealing with the loss of relatives in a car accident this week. To honor Foley, New Hampshire's governor has asked flags to be flown at half-staff Sunday for a service in his memory. 3 journalists with international broadcaster Al Jazeera are petitioning for their freedom. The 3 men, Peter Grista, Mohammed Fadel Fahmy, and Bahir Mohammed, are in Egyptian custody right now. Their lawyers followed an appeal Thursday after an Egyptian court convicted them in June of aiding the Muslim Brotherhood. The court proceedings have been widely criticized and seen as an attack on the free press. Delphine Halgand is the U.S. Director of Reporters Without Borders, a nonprofit defending freedom of the press. She also provides financial and other aid to journalists assigned to dangerous places. Your organization does. Of course, this was founded in France. These proceedings going on in Egypt, is that the norm now?
You know, I will not tell you something new, but Egypt has never been a paradise for journalists, but clearly since the army seized power last July, the respect for press freedom has declined tremendously. And we can think of the 6 journalists who have been killed this last year, dozens of journalists who have been arrested, and right now there are still 16 journalists detained, among them the 3 Al Jazeera journalists. And today, and as every day at Reporters Without Borders, we call for their release and just for the authorities to respect the new constitution, which actually guarantees press freedom.
So the conditions that working journalists are facing in Egypt right now must be very frightening.
Yeah, the conditions for the journalists are clearly getting worse and worse. It's more and more difficult to work and to report in a fair way in Egypt because after having seen a kind of brotherification of the media, now we are really clearly seeing a sissification, which means that it's hard for the journalists to report clearly the both sides of the situation in Egypt.
It's been very difficult for journalists, all of us journalists, to report the death of James Foley. You knew him.
Yeah, I knew James. Actually, we call him Jim. And he was a very experimented and passionate journalist, but most importantly, he was a very kind and caring person. I met him actually in 2012 when he was raising funds with other photojournalists for the kids of a friend of him who was killed when reporting in Libya. So that's how I met Jim, and I think the last time I talked to him, it was when Austin Tice, another American journalist, disappeared in Syria in August 2012, and Jim was really, as always, ready to help immediately.
Well, may he rest in peace. Is there anyone watching out for local journalists, people working in their own countries there?
You know, actually, our work at Reporters Without Borders is mostly for these unknown local journalists. Actually, there have been more than 160 journalists killed in Syria since the start of the uprising, and of course, most of them are Syrian. 12 foreign journalists have been killed in Syria since 2011, but all the others were Syrian.
Especially tough week this week. So from Reporters Without Borders, Delphine Halgand, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, another set of new rules issued today for the HHS contraceptive mandate. The rules from the Department of Health and Human Services give nonprofits a new way to object to offering contraceptive coverage. A lawyer with the Beckett Fund calls it the latest step in the administration's long retreat on the HHS mandate. The rules come off the back of the Supreme Court decision in favor of Hobby Lobby. We will have an in-depth analysis of these new rules next week on EWTN News Nightly. Well, some Catholics and pro-life groups across the country continue to voice concern over the popular Ice Bucket Challenge. They're worried the money raised will go to embryonic stem cell research, which involves the destruction of human embryos. Wyatt Goolsby gives us a closer look at this controversy tonight.
Brian, nearly everyone will agree that raising money to find a cure for ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease is a good idea, but for some, the problem revolves around the ALS Association's support of medical research that uses embryonic stem cells, which goes against Catholic teaching. To say the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge has gone viral would be an understatement. In the last 3 weeks, average Joes, entertainment celebrities, and even presidents have posted videos getting drenched, raising more than $53 million for the ALS Association. But not everyone is dumping ice buckets on their heads. This week, the State Department confirmed that high-ranking officials were reminded they cannot participate.
Federal government ethics rules prevent us from using our public offices, such as high public offices, such as ambassadors, for private gain, no matter how worthy the cause is.
It's one reason why President Obama has declined the challenge, but has agreed to donate. Meanwhile, Catholics in the Archdiocese of Cincinnati put a new spin on their donation.
And we're doing this today to give our money to the John Paul II Medical Research Institute in Iowa.
Catholics there haven't held back on the ice buckets, but instead are encouraging others to donate to pro-life causes. Drew Belsky with Live Action says the core problem is supporting the ALS Association, which has funded embryonic stem cell research.
There are several different kinds of stem cells, and the important ones are adult stem cells and embryonic ones. The adult ones you can get from many places, such as bone marrow or from blood. The problem with the embryonic stem cells is that they come from human embryos, and they require the death of the embryo from whom you harvest them.
This week, the ALS Association told EWTN News Nightly the money specifically raised from the Ice Bucket Challenge will go to support adult stem cell research, not embryonic stem cell research, and that anyone who donates can specify they don't want to fund that area. But Belsky says it's not that simple.
But the problem with money is that it's fungible. So even if you are donating and they're telling you, don't worry, we're going to do just the good stuff with your money, that's going to free up money for them to do the stuff that you object to.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has not made a formal statement on the Ice Bucket Challenge nationally, but some local dioceses have offered alternative charities to donate, like the Archdiocese of Cincinnati has. So, Brian, no issue with dumping ice on your head, but many are just urging you to pay attention to where you donate your money.
Thank you, Wyatt. Certainly an important discussion.
Absolutely.
Coming up, the National Guard exits Ferguson as hopes for calm are rising, and climbing to new heights of sacred art appreciation. Thanks for joining us for EWTN News Nightly on this Friday evening. It's been almost 2 weeks now since a police officer shot and killed Michael Brown in suburban St. Louis. The community of Ferguson, where this happened, has been tense and violent. But now there's a shift in mood. After nights of violent protests and riots, clergy and police stood hand in hand last night as law enforcement begin to pull back The protesters, now peace marchers, line the streets. People held memorials where violent clashes once broke out. The Missouri State Highway Patrol is commending the community for the calm. A coloring book and a box of crayons are on display where handguns were just a few days ago.
This is what defines a community. This is truly the community of Ferguson. It's what we see on this table today.
Michael Brown's funeral is scheduled for Monday. We have Jonathan Topaz from Politico with us, which looks at politics and policy here in D.C. The National Guard is leaving Ferguson now. The funeral is on Monday. What's next there in Ferguson, do you think?
The next is that there are two investigations going on right now. The grand jury is hearing evidence on the state investigation, and there's a parallel federal investigation from the Justice Department. So we will await those investigations to see what sort of charges may come against Officer Darren Wilson, who shot and killed Michael Brown.
What do you know about Wilson? Have you looked into his past?
We know very little, actually. There was a Ferguson Police Department video released showing Wilson in February receiving an award, and that was actually the first footage we've seen of him. It took the police department 6 days to release his name, and they released very little information. Other than that, we know that he was born in Texas. We know that he lives roughly 20 miles outside Ferguson, and he was put on paid administrative leave since the incident, but that's about all we know.
Part of this debate is that the military sends surplus supplies to police departments. So they have military gear, so to speak. How are members of Congress reacting to this now?
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of backlash against that, both on the left and on the right. Hank Johnson of Georgia, a Democratic congressman, has introduced legislation to severely cut back that law. We've seen Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill, home state of Missouri. She's going to chair a hearing on this. And we've seen House Armed Services member Duncan Hunter, as well as Missouri Democrats writing Chuck Hagel, Defense Secretary, calling for a review of the program. So there's been a lot of movement on this issue. There's a lot of concern seeing police officers in riot gear with sniper rifles and armored vehicles. Those were really jarring images to a lot of people.
Meanwhile, the president remains on vacation in Martha's Vineyard. With this going on and a lot of crises around the world, what are people saying about that?
You know, I think it depends who you talk to. You know, I think there are a lot of folks who are going to criticize the president for that. The White House and other folks will tell you that the president is always working. I think in particular, there was a photo op of him on the golf course after announcing, after talking about the death of James Foley, who was a photojournalist who died in Iraq.
That didn't go very well, did it?
That did not go very well. But in general, the president's always working. I think that the vacation thing might be a bit overblown, but there's a White House who clearly doesn't care that much about appeasing what people want vis-a-vis optics. And I think you're certainly seeing that play out.
Jonathan Topaz from Politico, thanks for your insight tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, Pope Francis is releasing the theme for the next World Day of Peace, January 1st, 2015. Slaves no more, but brothers and sisters is the theme of the New Year's message. The Holy Father hopes to counter human trafficking, slave labor, and the exploitation of women and children. His message will focus on building a society based on the dignity of every person. Pope Paul VI started the World Day of Peace. The Holy Father's message is sent to all the world's foreign ministers. It also maps out the Holy See's diplomatic priorities for the coming year. From stained glass windows to wood carvings, art has always been a very important part of the Church. Catherine Szeltner shows us tonight how some are now taking the steps to restore it.
Right up these steps, direct access. Mary Angela Schroth is teaching about a different set of stairs. The Scala Santa, or Holy Stairs, are known as the same steps Jesus took to reach Pontius Pilate during his Passion. Schroth is an American art curator based in Rome. On average, 2 million pilgrims trek up the Scala Santa in Rome on their knees each year. With the visitor wear and tear, Schroth started noticing the stairs were deteriorating.
Right.
Now, she's coordinating a 10-year restoration project.
It's an essential part of this new reform that's going on right now in the Church.
From Rome, Italy, to right here in Washington, D.C., the Church is interested in the arts.
Before people could read, the art was actually a source of educating people with regard to the Gospels and the stories in the Bible through the windows and through the carvings and through the other art that was actually placed in the churches.
The patron of the Arts DC chapter recently invested in a laser for Vatican Museum restoration projects. It can clean stone, stucco, paintings, metal, and wood without damaging it. And Schroth thinks the current boost in church arts has to do with a certain Francis factor. By the Holy Father attending a Patron of the Arts event in October, he showed a personal interest in the arts.
There wasn't a political reason. Pope Francis greeted each and every one of us in this group.
With papal support, Schroth hopes the restored holy stairs inside of the San Lorenzo Chapel will raise the faithful to a higher level.
Restoration will bring a new beauty, a new interest, but the basic tenets of the sanctuary are really about faith.
Catherine Szeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, the most wonderful time of the year, kids going back to school, and we want to share your pictures. And young people choosing farming as a profession in New England? Yep, it's a new trend. On Friday, August 22nd, thanks for joining us for EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. New England farms are seeing a surge in younger farmhands as the buy local food movement grows across the country. Our Catherine Elliott reports.
Meet the face of the New England farmer, young, eager to help, and wanting to learn. As the number of farms has grown by 5% since 2007, farms across the region are seeing a surge in younger generations of helping hands. Young farmers like Caroline, who gave up her nonprofit job to become an assistant farm manager, says it's the desire for instant gratification of a hard day's work that's so appealing.
I wanted to work outside, and I wanted to do something meaningful with my time and something that had very direct results. When I was doing nonprofit work, I felt that it took a lot longer to see the results of my labor.
Farmers and industry experts say the popularity of the buy local food movement has helped create a new market for newer, smaller farms that communities can easily access.
New England is going in the opposite direction of adding more farms, adding young people to farms, and primarily in the area of small farms, organic farms, local farms, working directly with customers, bucking the national trend.
But farming isn't always easy.
You work so hard, and I can't say that it's always easy, and it has its frustrating moments when the pump breaks, or you have a lamb that you lose or something. Sometimes it's devastating, but still you get to see there's a very measurable sense of what you've accomplished.
While the thought of leaving a traditional desk job to take up the farming life has its risks, farmers say it's one that younger folks are willing to take.
If there aren't, the opportunity to get a real, kind of standard job where you go and punch your time card and get your paycheck, I think it makes riskier ventures, a little bit more appealing.
Appealing for farm workers and food shoppers alike. Catherine Elliott, EWTN News Nightly.
I might add, as an accomplished gardener, Catherine knows how hard that work is. And as kids go back to school, we know that you have some great pictures that you'd like to share. In fact, this is my grandson, Christian, his first time on a school bus, day one of kindergarten. These kids are family members of our creative director, Angela Mitchell, all dressed up for school. We encourage you to send your pictures of your loved ones with their new outfits, their uniforms, their backpacks and pencil cases. We might include them on our Labor Day special of EWTN News Nightly. Email your high-quality photos to newsplanning.ewtn.com. Until Monday, we encourage you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and watch again on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Thank you for watching tonight, and we leave you with more beautiful pictures taken by our team looking back at Pope Francis's trip to South Korea. Good night, and God bless you.